Throughout time and space, there have been a few number of games that have managed to become immortal in the eyes of gamers. Games that will be mentioned as long as there are video games. One of these games is Final Fantasy VII.
So I know that Final Fantasy VII is a really big game and all, and so I can't necessarily cover everything. So if I leave something out, it's not because I forgot it, but it's because I'm on a time limit. So with that being said, how about we jump right into the history?
After the release of Final Fantasy VII in 1994, development for Final Fantasy VII began promptly after it was clear that 6 was a success. Final Fantasy VI had sold over 3.48 million copies worldwide, and received widespread critical acclaim even to this day. In 2012, IGN listed 6 as the #1 RPG of all time. Development for 7 started in 1994, but would soon be pushed back to 1995 due to the fact that the rest of the Square team was still working on Chrono Trigger. Some initial ideas that were originally planned for 7 were then implemented into Chrono Trigger. Supposedly, the Final Fantasy VII that was based on the Super Nintendo was set in New York City, and would use the same graphical style as the Donkey Kong Country games by using SGI graphics. The Super Nintendo cartridge was supposed to be 64 megabytes. In comparison, some of the largest games on the Super Nintendo cap off at about 48 megabytes. When development resumed in 1995, there were approximately 120 artists and programmers on the job, as well as a budget of $45 million. It was the most expensive video game of its time. At the ACM SIGGRAPH 95 convention, Square unveiled a tech demo of Final Fantasy VI characters in a real-time battle. The demo ran on Silicon graphics and used intensive 3D modeling. For everyone, this was a quick peek into what the future held. The demo has been known today as the Final Fantasy SGI demo. By the time 1996 came around, development was switched from the Super Nintendo to the Nintendo 64, or as it was known back then, the Nintendo Ultra 64. With the technology used in the SGI demo, Square wanted to implement it into Final Fantasy VII. This kind of technology was really only available on the CD-ROM at the time. When Nintendo announced that they would be sticking with the cartridge format, Square was faced with a difficult decision. Cartridge games were still extremely expensive to produce. Instead of Final Fantasy VII appearing on the Nintendo 64, Square announced that it would instead be on the Sony PlayStation. Fans cried foul and accused Square of betrayal. However, in 1996, development for Final Fantasy VII would begin on Sony's PlayStation. Final Fantasy VI would be the last Final Fantasy released on a Nintendo console until the release of Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles on the Nintendo GameCube 7 years later. For the first time since working on the Famicom, Hironobu Sakaguchi wanted to put gameplay on a higher priority than the story, due to the fact that the team didn't quite know how to make the 3D work in the game. The decision would become a mix of 2D and 3D in the end. The solution being to use pre-rendered backgrounds to have realistic environments and 3D character models, much like Resident Evil. Also, with the PlayStation's new technology, Square was able to add in full motion videos which looked quite similar to the in-game graphics. Transitions between the game and the videos were almost seamless. The music again was recorded by series veteran Nobuo Uematsu. The music files would be saved in the MIDI format for the PlayStation's internal sound chip. The first time gamers got to play 7 was in a demo disc included with the fighting game, Tabal No. 1. The demo allowed you to play through the beginning of Midgar and had many differences from the final game. Because of Square's decision to switch to the PlayStation and the huge success of Final Fantasy VI, 7 would either ruin the company or send the series into infinity. Final Fantasy VII launched in Japan on January 31st, 1997, and to North America later that September. It was an instant success due to the 3-month marketing campaign. It consisted of your normal 30-second TV commercials, as well as a theatrical trailer. It was also sponsored by Pepsi during the holidays, and even had printed ads in magazines such as Rolling Stone, Details, Spin, and even Playboy. These ads were also printed in comic books published by DC and Marvel. A PC version of the game would be released a year later in the summer of 1998. The game has continued to sell quite well even today. Overall, the game has sold over 10 million copies worldwide. 7 is easily the most popular entry in the Final Fantasy series. People loved everything about the game. You name it. Graphics, music, story. 7 had it all. Square had done it. They managed to create one of the greatest games of all time. Our story begins with our protagonist, Cloud Strife, and the local freedom fighter group known as Avalanche. Cloud, being a mercenary, is just in it for the money, while the rest of the group, including the leader Barrett, believes that they are helping to revive the planet by destroying the Mako reactors of the capital city of Midgar. These Mako reactors are indeed using what's known as the life stream of the planet to produce energy. In return, to use this energy, it's actually taking the energy of the planet itself. Of course, the major corporation behind this is known as Shinra. Shinra is a common threat throughout the game, and even has secret agents called the Turks that try to slow your progress. But the real enemy in the game is the one, the only, Sephiroth. But we'll talk about him later. After the success of the first mission, Cloud is reunited with his childhood friend Tifa. Of course, word has gone around about Avalanche and the Mako reactor by now, so the group plans a second attack on another Mako reactor. But knowing Shinra, they set up a trap, and Cloud becomes separated from the group. Cloud then meets with, once again, Eris, the flower girl of the slums. I always kind of find it fun to read the conversations between Eris and Cloud, especially if you've played the game once before. But yet again, we'll talk about that later. Soon, Eris is kidnapped, and Cloud, Barrett, and Tifa go to save her. In the Shinra headquarters, the group meets Red 13 and learns that the creature named Genova is there. After being captured by the Turks, the cells open up only to find the president of Shinra assassinated by Sephiroth. The group then makes an escape by highway and begins their journey. How about that for an intro? After learning of Sephiroth's evil intentions, it's your job to stop him. Sephiroth plans to use the black materia to cast Meteor, which will destroy the world, and the only way to counter it is with the white materia, which casts Holy, which would negate the meteor. Of course, I've simplified the main story by a lot, but that's because I have so much to cover. Trust me, it's better if you play the game yourself. The adventures of 7 are one to behold. The gameplay is pretty standard for an RPG. You walk around on the map, you fight a random enemy, they drop money and experience when you beat them, which then makes you more powerful and able to fight the bosses in the game. But an RPG is more than that. It's about the moments in between the battles and the grinding. It's not about the destination, it's the adventure. During the course of the game, there are all sorts of different vehicles that you can use, like a rover, chocobos, a shot-down plane, a submarine, a motorcycle when you're escaping Midgar, and even an airship, which belongs to the one and only Cid. In case you didn't know, in most Final Fantasy games, Cid is always a common character that has to do with airships in some way, shape, or form. There's just so much to do. You can go to Gold Saucer and play all the minigames to your heart's content. You can raise chocobos. You can go on side quests, and hell, you can even go on a date of your choosing at Gold Saucer by the way you treat them throughout the game. Or, if you're really lucky, you can go on a date with Barret. Don't let that machine gun arm scare you off, ladies. Personally, though, I'm a fan of Tifa. Just saying. You could also recruit other people to help out your cause, like Yuffie, Kate Sith, Vincent Valentine, my personal favorite, and eventually even Cid could join you in battle. You could do so many things and have so much fun when you weren't worrying about the end of the world. However, when you were worrying about the end of the world, it was still tons of fun. The battles took up most of this for me. Unlike previous Final Fantasies, 7 only allowed for 3 people to be in a party. But that doesn't mean that the battle system was hindered in any way. In fact, it actually got better. During battle, each character got a new ability called a limit break. After taking enough damage, the limit bar would fill up, allowing you to use an extremely powerful attack. You could either use it as soon as you got it, or you could save it for another battle. But that's not the only new thing. The camera also moves around to make the battles have a much more cinematic feel. And no camera angle is used twice in battle, except for the summons. Some of these amazing summons were close to a minute in length. You only had 3 items to equip to each character: a weapon, armor, and an accessory. At first this seems a little restricting, but when you realize how much depth the Materia system has, it definitely balances it out. The Materia are the abilities in the game, like magic, summons, class abilities, and so on. Materia is crystallized Mako from the planet, so when someone uses the Materia, they are using the planet's energy and the people who are a part of the life stream. Because of this connection, the user is allowed to use the abilities that these people once had. Materia also levels up, which allows for more powerful spells. After a battle, you would gain ability points. However, when you switch the Materia, the experience would go with the Materia instead of the character. Not only that, but you could also pair Materia together for different effects. Of course, Materia would take up a certain amount of slots, and as you gain better weapons and armor, the more slots you are allowed. Not only that, but the Materia that was equipped would give you stat bonuses that reflected the ability. As stated before, Materia played a pivotal role in the story, with Black Materia casting Meteor to destroy the world, and White Materia, which casts Holy, which would defend the Earth from the meteor. Black and White Materia had been in previous Final Fantasy games, but they never had this much of an impact before. The game dealt with some surprisingly adult material, including cross-dressing as a main objective, and an open reference to prostitution. Barret and Cid also had a mouth of a sailor and would curse every other sentence. And 7 was also the first in the series to show blood. Like I said before, you could choose whose affections you wanted, with Tifa and Aeris being the 2 main female roles. However, in the end, it didn't matter who you picked. After the release of Final Fantasy VI, Hironobu Sakaguchi was faced with the death of his mother. To cope with this, Sakaguchi created many concepts as an effect, such as Genova. Other concepts would go back to religious views such as rebirth and resurrection. Even the name Sephiroth comes straight from the Kabbalah, which describes the 10 heavenly attributes of God. However, the one most heavily implemented would be the death of Aeris. The reason why her death has made such an impact in gamers is because it was so sudden. There were no tears or words, only a goodbye. Aeris' death has gone to be known one of the most shocking moments in video game history, and for good reason as well. Some gamers thought that there was a way to bring Aeris back by the means of reviving her, but it was never meant to be. Sakaguchi himself even said, Aeris was always meant to die. On the other hand, Sephiroth was a man of pure evil. Before he went insane, Sephiroth was one of the best soldiers of Shinra. Soldiers are genetically enhanced super soldiers that are infused with Mako energy. Sephiroth was the best of the best. After finding out that Sephiroth was part of the Cetra, or Ancients, an ancient alien race that was chased off their homeworld by Genova. Genova was a vampiric alien that had almost destroyed the Cetra, except for Eris, her mother, and Sephiroth. After learning this, Sephiroth goes on a rampage. Soon after this rampage, Cloud chases down Sephiroth and pushes him into the Mako reactor, in which Sephiroth crystallizes his body. Sephiroth then pledged to destroy the world by whatever means possible. In this case, it meant nearly destroying the world by bringing a meteor crashing down, which would expose the lifestream, which would then allow him to absorb the energy, and essentially become a god. 7 was a technical marvel, and allowed for infinite creativity to flood the screen. The art style of the game was very unique and appealing to the eye. With the use of pre-rendered backgrounds, the game looked much more realistic and had fantastic environments. The character models in 3D also look great for the time. What you're looking at right now is a mod of the PC version of the game that replaced the models with updated ones. Speaking of the art though, the only reason that you would recognize this as a Final Fantasy game is because of the title. 7 didn't look anything like past entries in the series, in which they stuck to a very medieval style. The only thing that did stick out were the summons and chocobos. On the other hand, the music was classic. Some of the music in this game is absolutely amazing, and has some of the best tracks in Final Fantasy history. There are all sorts of reorchestrations and remasters of this music, but my personal favorite would have to be the piano collections. They are absolutely bliss. If you want some peaceful music to listen to, then I would highly suggest this album.
So I'd love to go on and on and on and on about how much I love Final Fantasy VII, but I can't do it. It's weird. And I mean, I know I've already talked a lot about it, but wait. I think I know someone who can. Hold on, just 1 second.
Basically, why this game is fucking awesome is because, I mean, the story is just like... I can't even compare anything else I've really experienced to this because... I don't know, it may be just because I love this game and I'm completely biased, but I feel like it's incredibly original. It's like, it's got like the classic, you know, good versus evil, but then you also have some characters in there that are like double agents. I'm not going to say who, but there's some people in there. You're like, are you on my side or not? You be fucking horse dealing on my materia. Anyways, yeah, it's just really great that you can spend hours upon hours upon hours just doing side missions. You can, if you choose to, there are multiple parts of the game where you can just completely explore somebody's, you know, backstory. I find it really unique that depending on who you have in your party, they'll react different ways to different situations. Like, I know there's a scene where Reno and Rude were talking about who's hotter, Aerith or Yuffie, or not Yuffie, Aerith or Tifa. And depending on who you have in your party, it's kind of funny to have both of the girls there when they're talking about them, because then they get all flirty and stuff. It's fucking hilarious. Anyways, yeah, I mean, the battle system, I don't know. A lot of people complain about how the battle system is, like, turn-based, but I don't know. That kind of gives it the classic, like, RPG feel, which is really what drives me to love this game. Final Fantasy VII draws you in emotionally. You kind of feel like a connectedness to the character. And, I mean, if you really think about it, everybody pegs Cloud for this, like, whiny, bitchy, oh, poor me kind of guy. And it's like, okay, basically, if you had numerous people die in your life, and they're the only people that matter to you, and you blamed yourself for them deaths, which is one of the fucking steps of the grieving process, is, like, blame of self or some shit. I don't know, something like that. Anyways, yeah. The fact that he gets up every morning, fucking throws on that huge 90-pound sword that he can carry with his tiny little arms, which, fuck physics, whatever, it's Final Fantasy VII, and go out and, you know, save the world. I mean, that speaks to his character. Although Vincent's my favorite.
And that's why Matt loves Final Fantasy VII. The debate will rage on about which Final Fantasy is the best, but there's no denying that 7 is definitely the most popular, or that the game left one of the largest stamps on the industry itself. It was the first Final Fantasy game to come to PC. It had many different spin-offs such as Dirge of Cerberus, where you play as Vincent Valentine after the events of 7, Final Fantasy Crisis Core, in which you play as Zack, Cloud's best friend and underappreciated hero of 7, Savior Cloud, and Aeris's ex-boyfriend. And as well as Before Crisis, which focused on the Turks and was released on mobile phones in Japan. 7 would also be the candidate for a full-length movie called Final Fantasy VII Advent Children, which picks up almost immediately after 7 ends. It goes through the events of the aftermath of Sephiroth's actions in the city of Midgar. There was also supposed to be an anime called Final Fantasy VII The Last Order, which was unfortunately cancelled after the first episode. In 2005, at Sony's press conference, there was a tech demo of what Final Fantasy VII would look like running on a PS3. Although the demo was only for the purpose of demonstrating, many people still mistake it as a trailer for a remake of 7. In an interview with Square Enix CEO Yoshi Wada, he stated that they wouldn't remake 7 until they made a better game than the beloved classic. My response being this: Square Enix, listen to your fans. Please. We don't want any more Final Fantasy 13. Give us something promising, like 13 Versus instead. I know that you're scared because if you remake 7, it might possibly end the franchise. But simply put, if you don't continue to make better games than the ones now, then do it, because no one likes to see such a great franchise suffer. Flame Shield? Up! Final Fantasy VII is on the PlayStation, PC, and PlayStation Network, with the most recent release being on Square Enix Online Store for PC. If you can hunt down the original PlayStation version, it would be highly recommended that you get it, as I see it as one of the most fun versions of the game.
Well, I hope you all enjoyed your time here today. This has been Sam from Other Side Gaming, and if you haven't thought about your ancestors lately, think again. I'll see you next time.